Okay, just a couple more bright little highlights in here because I feel like I kind of lost the edge of my shadow. So I'll just do a couple more little horizontal lines just to brighten up this one spot. I really want to stay away from any little dab, you know, of vertical shapes because it just has such an effect on the perspective. Just one little dab of the brush makes a shape that doesn't look flattened out, and it just has such an effect. You know, you wouldn't think it would matter that much, but it does. I'm just putting a little bit more of that white in this one area, just so I have that shadow coming across. So now I want to come through and define this shadow again, and I'm pretty much just going to do it with this darkest reflection color and blend that in to the rest of the water, and then call this good. So I'll put my darkest color right through the middle where I want my deepest crevice to be, and let's just put black in there, and then I'll blend the rock out from that dark stripe, and then I'll blend the water out from that dark stripe. So we have a very similar color for both of them. So let's put an orange kind of a color here, and when that hits that black it's going to turn brown. Let's put the red down in the black. That's my rock. I got more red than yellow in there. I need to add yellow. Okay. Put some yellow up high here. So as I continue to just work that into the black, it's all going to become one brownish color. And I can use that color down here on the water too. And I'll just be sure that I don't pull it too far out, you know, into the nice water that I already did, but try to stick with my reflection areas. Just make a nice shadow there. I might need to add a little bit of white, we'll see. Oh, there's already some white in there. Let's grab more of this. So again, I leave that darkest area right in the middle of that divide. Let's get that gray evened out. Okay. This color's starting to blend in. Got some nice shadows under that rock. That's kind of fun because it looks like there's light bouncing off the water hitting the rock. I can take a tiny bit of white and go like this. Alright, I'm just going to keep blending that. Okay, let's take a look at some of the comments from last week, and that was the video that I edited myself. So right away, Daniela says, I really like this editing style with the voiceover and time-lapse. Thank you very much, Daniela. And it took me an entire day to do what my brother Ben does in an hour. So I definitely will not be doing that very frequently, but it did feel good to refresh my abilities to produce a video on my own. I feel like I'm still validated as a video editor like I did in the old days. Matt Nicholson is getting back to me on what is a tonalist. And so he says, tonalists care more about correct values and color. Colorists care more about color and won't use black. Max says that the problem with the colorist method, I'm paraphrasing, it is substituting black with burnt umber. Umber pigment is just dirt, and burnt umber is burnt dirt. Now, I did not know that. That's interesting to me, so thank you for that information. So I just feel I have more control over my values since I use a limited palette. Red, yellow, blue, black, white. I can mix burnt umber with those colors, but I can't get a true black with just primaries. If that makes sense. Yes, it does. I relate very much. So this is a good point that Mac brings up. You can mix a brown, as you've seen me do here, but every pigment definitely has its place. And so those brown pigments, burnt umber, raw umber, however you call it, I can't mix a brown in a, I think Mac mentions this too, I can't mix a brown that's just like that umber. I can mix something close. So when I need my richest brown, I might go to an umber pigment, but I definitely think having access to the darkest black is the most valuable thing. So I definitely always use black, and then I can make the illusion of more color than there actually is by putting a brighter color than I would have and just putting black in the middle of it, you know, so that it kind of has a colored halo around it. Thanks for the information, Mac, on the browns, and I'm glad to hear that you value the use of black. I found it to be very helpful in my work as well. Jay Sullivan says, transitionary color? I think you mean local color. Either that or mid-tone. It goes on to say, I'm still wondering if your murals have been cracking because of water breaking the binding agent in the paint. Okay, these are good points that you bring up, Jay, and I have talked in the past in other videos about using a middle color, and I remember struggling with what to call it. Well, should I call this the true color, or should I call it the local color? I remember there was a lot of suggestions, there were some other good suggestions. I said, well, in the end I decided I'm going to call it the object color, because I like to, and a good example is when I do something like this log, where I have the object color I've decided is this brown, and then I'm going to add shadow to the object's color. I'm going to add black to the object's color to get the shadow. I'm going to add white to the object's color to get the highlight. And if you go back to the early episodes of this project, that's what I did. I worked from that middle color. So then you could also fairly say mid-tone. I like to call it an object color when using it in that setting. So this is why I choose transitionary color. This is where I draw a difference. Now the same thing could be said for this pine tree. So you could fairly argue that I should call that the same thing, call it the object color. That other artists would probably call a mid-tone, but I just like calling it the object color. Transitionary color specifically addresses this problem, that when you're modeling what light would do when it combines, when you're painting the natural world, you're simulating light striking many objects and combining, mixing different colors. And since light does not do what paint does, to make a particular mix that goes from one light to another light color, and they're mixing in the middle, well, if it was just light and we were just mixing light, you don't need a color in that middle. The mix is it. That is the middle color. But with paint, I have to use a transitionary color to bring this color into this color without it making a wrong color in the middle. So it's specifically for transitioning from one color to another color, not specifically for representing the actual color of the object. So that's the difference that I would want to define between saying transitionary color versus an object color. When I paint a cloud, I will use red and add a little bit of red to the color that I put in between the cloud's shadow and the bright white. Now, the color of the cloud is nowhere close to red. Red is my transitionary color, and the truth is I add that red to a mix of the white and my blue violet that I use for the shadow. So I have this very kind of red violet that I use for a transitionary color on a cloud. It's a real normal looking cloud, doesn't look like a red cloud, but that little bit of transitionary color helps me with it. So maybe I shouldn't specifically call the color on that pine tree transitionary, but there is value in defining the difference. And I remember Jay mentioning this before about the paint possibly cracking from a lot of water being added. So I don't actually add a lot of water to the paint. I think that because I add the water to the surface after I apply the paint, that makes a difference too. So the paint gets a good bond on the wall, and then I put water over the surface, and that water is drying really quickly while I'm blending. So the paint gets thicker and thicker while I'm still blending it. So it's not the same as doing like a 50-50 mix of paint and water and then just putting that on the wall. I do think that that would definitely compromise the integrity of the paint. But when I add water to my paint directly and then apply it to the wall, it's like, you know, 5-10%. It's a small amount. A little bit of water is all it takes to significantly thin the viscosity of the paint. So I appreciate you bringing up those valuable points, Jay. Luke Mitchell says, in a big piece like this, I love to see little hidden details that maybe nobody else has. I think your daughter might like that too. How about a little ladybug nestled away? Thanks for the continued lesson from Bermuda. Thanks for the shout out from Bermuda. You know what's funny about this is that I was painting a mural at my best friend Todd's house for his son Cooper, and you can look at that online. It's like a hobbit house. It's a mural of a little tree over a hobbit house, real simple. And so Todd asks his son Cooper, he says, what do you want to put in the mural? Let's put something special in it. You can decide what he paints. He says, I want a ladybug in a tree reading a book. That's what he said. He's like, I don't know, he must have been 5 years old, just a little guy. And that's what he wanted. So I painted that exact thing. And that ladybug in the tree reading the book is about as big as this fingernail right here. And so, you know, I should do a zoomed in photo of that one of these days. I never did post it anywhere, but anybody that sees that in person, they can see the tiny ladybug reading a book. Eric Kilius says, what kind of brushes are you using? So I use mostly Purdy brand paintbrushes. Do I have any laying around here? And they're the same brushes that many paint contractors use to cut in walls. You know, they get a nice clean edge. I like brushes that give me a nice sharp edge when I paint a line. So I always use synthetic bristles. Now these down here on the floor, I used to buy more expensive brushes, but I burned through them just as fast as these super cheap brushes. And I noticed that the bristles performed just as well. So this brush, it was just a couple of bucks, and it has synthetic bristles. These are not natural hair bristles. And you can see that it has an angled cut. I don't always use one that has an angled cut. I use them with a square cut a lot of the time, but they just about always have this, you know, they're skinny this way, wide this way, and I can cut a really sharp line. That's how I do a lot of my water reflection, is going this way. When those bristles are wet, they really taper to a sharp point, and I can do very tiny details like the little splashes of white water and little grass blades and reflection. I mean, whatever. But this is the only brush that I've found does a good and quick job of those kinds of details. So this is really just a miniature version of your typical Purdy contractor style paintbrush. Nylon polyester bristles is what those big ones are made of. I don't know what this is made of. Probably something similar. Linda Nelson leaves a very nice compliment after she says thank you for all of the jibber jabber and saying the agreeing with the value of inventing the tool that you need. She says, please consider doing more voiceover videos, Joe, and most importantly, jabber on, my friend. These are golden nuggets you are sharing. God bless you and your generosity, Joe. Well, thank you very much for the flattering compliment, and it's always a huge thrill for me to hear that my research is benefiting somebody besides myself, besides this one painting. As I've said before, I get a bigger thrill out of knowing that is something that I've found can be helpful to many other people than I do out of having people admire my painting. I was never able to complete a painting, believe it or not, before I started making how-to videos. Well, actually, you know, when I started doing murals for a living, I started completing paintings. But I guess I should say that I was never so excited about the paintings as when I started wanting to make instructional content, because then I became a researcher and I was researching what I love to study. And so this is how I love to spend my time, is figuring out, well, why is that? I mean, I see that that's working, or I see that that's not working, but why? I gotta know why so that I can do this later. And the thrill of just finding that answer is so much more valuable than whether or not I use that answer very well in a painting and make a nice painting. I don't feel like I have that many great paintings. Every painting I see, I'm like, oh, it definitely could be better, but oh well, I want to move on. So thank you very much for the nice compliment. Denise Butler says, this foam tool reminded me of making potato stencils for my kids. I've done that too. That is fun. I like that. And you know, maybe a potato would have worked for this. Maybe that would be a good alternative. Marilyn Nicholas says, you should get a patent for this tool before anyone else does. Amazing painting. Thank you very much for that nice compliment. I learned this in researching whether or not to get patents on different ideas I invented. Once something is public, you cannot patent it. So now that you've seen it on this video, you're free to use it. And it's not like you didn't know you're free to use it. Nobody's ever going to stop you from cutting a piece of foam. But if something's public, then it doesn't get patented. And so I like that, because now I know that I can post things that I invent without worrying about somebody else taking it and not allowing me to use it later. I didn't know that before I looked into it, but that's kind of a cool thing. Once something is on a public platform, it can't be patented. LinzerTube says, hope your Thanksgiving was great, Joe. Well, thank you very much, LinzerTube. I hope your Thanksgiving was great also. I did have a great Thanksgiving. My wife's family came in from Texas and down from Prescott Valley. Up from Prescott Valley, that's south of us here. And we had a good old time. It's been a while since that family got together. Autumn Martino says, why not try a paint marker in green with a fine tip and draw little lines all over the tree area? Maybe that would work great, but I need speed. So that was the purpose of the foam, is, you know, to get 10 needles at a time with one motion. Because in doing a big wall, you know, the time really adds up if I have to do one at a time, little needles. But thank you for that comment, Autumn, and for watching my video. I really appreciate that. Feliz Splash says, I am from Colombia, South America. Well, thank you for tuning in all the way from Colombia, South America. My English isn't very good, but I understand everything you say. Complex things. I'm so happy. Thank you very much. God bless you. Well, thank you very much for that very encouraging feedback, Felice. I hope you continue to watch and get some good value out of my videos. It's always very, very encouraging for me to hear that. Mitchell Wright just wanted to be the first to comment, so congratulations. All right, well, I'm going to stop there for today. Now, next week is going to be the final video on this project. So I'm going to time-lapse through a whole bunch of tiny, tedious details, and of course, I'm also saving them in real time for later use. And I'm going to look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you again for watching and all of the good comments. I'll see you next time.